Hey, welcome back, Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel. We have moved from the first book read up in my apartment to the second book read in the studio to the third book we're in the gallery, which I'll give you a tour of the next time we meet. So tonight we are starting Babe in the Woods, Path of Totality. It's the last in this series about this log cabin I built when I was 18 that I still own today. I wanted to draw your attention to the covers of these, if you haven't seen them. Each cover has different symbology in it in the background. So the first book has hand tools. The second book has a lot more art supplies. And this is a more eclectic book. It's got a typewriter, a phone, a mask, a pen, a tombstone, and a fire extinguisher. And all these images relate to the book. This book is different than the others because the other two have more of a theme, continuing theme. So this book takes off where I've taken some of the stories that I did not include in these books because it would break up the flow. So it's broken up into, the 143 pages are broken up into 3 sections. The first part is the early entries, and it's vignettes that didn't make it into the book. And Zach is getting down for some reason. Part 2 is later entries where I'm in my 30s to 60s, where there's a marriage, a lot of loss, a forest fire, and not so nice neighbors. And then the third one concludes it and brings you pretty much up to date. So I am working, I said after this third book series I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore, but I am working diligently every day on another book called Babe Out of the Woods, which talks about things that I normally don't relate to up at the log cabin. I just want to remind you, all these books are available on audiobook, narrated by the actor Kay Webster. She's great. When I do this stuff here, it's mostly, just for entertainment. I introduce my dogs, I introduce my friends, I tell little stories. But if you want a really smooth narrative, please check out Kay Webster's on audiobook. All right, tonight we've got about 6 pages. And this is the prologue, so it kind of catches you up like what I've been doing. Come on, Zach, you can get up. Zach, get up. Zach can't jump anymore. Can you see him? Yeah, can you put him up? Zach has gotten so old he can't jump up anymore. Oh, and tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day, so he's got his St. Patty's Day scarf on. Huh. Oh, and Teddy Bear's out for a run somewhere. He might join us later. Also one thing, this chair, this is my mother-in-law's, and it came around the horn. It's a very, very old chair, and actually on the back of this book jacket, Path of Totality, is a picture of me with both of my little boys. Remember, little Henry got lost. Well, went to heaven, dog heaven, a few weeks ago. But there's a picture of both me and my little boys on this chair. All right, prologue. Bandit with the final row of orthodontic braces at age 18, I bought 80 acres in the Oregon wilderness. On that vanilla-smelling ponderosa pine incline, I sawed trees to rebuild the home I lost at age 14 when daughter became orphan. Now eligible for senior citizen discounts, this cabin, laid up one log at a time, has weathered life along with me. Although my primary residence is a river state-of-the-art home, this is where I am right now, and studio with a push-button fireplace, charging outlets, and toggles galore, the mile-high cabin without electricity or cell reception remains my primal residence. And I still go there twice a month when I can get up on the roads. That's usually about 8 months of the year. This log cabin stands 2 stories at the end of a forest road and has all the comfort of no modern conveniences: axe, maul, and a splitting wedge for firewood supply heat. Buckets provide running water from the creek. Kerosene lamps shine reading and writing light. An eclectic library, accessed by climbing a hand-hewed tamarack loft ladder, is the closest it gets to Googling information. And that's my 1950s encyclopedia set I still use. The nearest notable population can be found in 2 small towns 13 miles away. The last few miles leading to the cabin are traversed on a barely passable road. I go there to be alone as often as possible, to paint, to write, and to work in this place of peace and quiet, beauty and repose, beside a mountain stream. Since notching those walls together, I've lived many lives and lived in as many states, both physical and psychological. No matter the station or mindset, sweating under and parched while bicycling in the Middle East desert, or professionally slick behind a polished podium at a research conference, or slack-jawed, astounded under the Sistine Chapel. Just recalling the ardent simplicity of my woodsy life sets me right in the moment, even if righteousness was lacking in the moment. One June, I returned to the cabin, still shaken by the entitled, grandiose, small-minded sets I'd outwitted, but who had whittled me down over 6 years working as a university art professor in Kuwait. Any sense of righteousness or refuge I believed I would reclaim on this mountainside imploded as I rounded the last bend of a rutted road with stretches named the Eliminator and Shit and Slide after disasters at those places. Smack in the easement sat a derelict slide-in camper shell deliberately left there by people who would never earn the name of good neighbors. I'd only been back a couple of weeks after working in a monarchy, tribal-ruled country where Dastasha-draped, misogynistic megalomaniacs get their way because no one has stopped them. Now I was safely away from them, I believed, on U.S. soil until a red, white, and blue version of the antagonists I thought I'd left in the desert sands bared their denim-jeaned, frontier-fortified asses in the forest. That signaled the demise of this turn-the-other-cheek, inculpable neophyte who once pranced around the cabin's hills and hollows wearing only moccasins, and the birth of a fuming, gun-toting, litigious, middle-aged woman with the first of 2 titanium hips. Before the term was popularized, my cabin was built off the grid in 1975 at a cost of $2,000. In 2015, when passage to this place was blocked, I spent 4 times this amount to protect my right to come and go freely there. Fighting to remain in ingress and egress reminded me of an axiom first heard when I dipped a toehold in the corner of this rural county. You can get away with murder around here. Years later, that cliche would illustrate my experience in the locals' court, and I emphasize locals' court, where I learned that injustice is not limited to courtrooms or county lines. In suburban Florida, a white man goes free after shooting and killing an unarmed 17-year-old black kid clutching a bag of Skittles. In Hollywood, an orange-haired man who brags about grabbing women by their pussies is elected as a U.S. president and fuels a deadly insurrection. In that same capital city, a male judge testifies in contradiction of a woman doctor accusing him of sexual assault. That accuser vilified, the defendant, protected by white class privilege, is appointed to the Supreme Court. The same one which will, in a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal decision, rule that a woman's uterus is chattel. In a corner of Oregon, a person shoots a dog within city limits where the discharge of firearms is banned, threatens the lives of law enforcement agents and neighbors, and blocks the easement to my property. The only pussy that got grabbed in this case was his outdoor cat, clamped in one of the coil spring traps set like landmines around property where I once ran freely in a bygone era when neighbors could be relied on and not feared. After I paid off legal bills to maintain my property rights, and I learned the hard and expensive way how it feels to be exploited by a nepotistical judicial system, I'm not in my log cabin, tuned into the flaming fireplace, but in my new hardy plank sided house on the Columbia River, watching Netflix on a flat screen television. In primal fear, Richard Gere, playing a ballsy, high-powered attorney, opens the movie with, "If you want justice, go to a whorehouse. If you want to get fucked, go to court." Chapter 1, Part 1, early entries. The journal. So I kept journals all the time. They were handwritten with a pen in notebooks. And later I transcribed some of them in an old computer and printed it out on a dot matrix printer, if any of you remember that. Okay, we're gonna stop here. Are we gonna stop here and let the dogs in or just keep going? Are we gonna stop here and let the dogs in? Okay.
The dogs are playing again.
Since building my log cabin in the shadow of a mountain named after a blushing berry, I have written 3 books about my alone time there. Each book is assembled around journal material and is a standalone story. Read as a series, the 3 chart a line of human and literary development from late adolescence to young adulthood to adulthood. One book does not make a memoir. It takes all 3, maybe more. Maybe that's my babe out of the woods. The first book, Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time, chronicles my building the cabin and living it. The second book, Babe in the Woods, Self-Portrait, takes off from there and spans my mid to late 20s. This book, Babe in the Woods, Path of Totality, is broken into a series of stories that spans 40 years with the log cabin as a core. They begin when I'm scraping by in my 20s and not old enough to buy cheap, sweet, cold duck champagne. And I tattle away until I am 60 and I can afford to savor an easily style, smoky, peaty Scotch whiskey. Each book was transcribed from journals written in jet blue or black Bic ballpoint ink. Attempt at proper penmanship is revealed in slanted cursive-lined notebooks, in the belly of every B and D, in the compound curves of M, S, and the linear X, Ys, and Zs. Still, the script is not worthy of Palmer Blue Method ribbons. As I practiced no other form of worship, my congregation at the cabin never extended beyond pint-sized domestic animals, bugs, birds, thieving rodents, and mountain airs. Nor did my time there include the erudite breeze of a critiquing literate societies. Letters leaked from a pen or tapped through the typewriter ribbon complemented my conversible core. The cabin journals are slapdash notes of events and the people who played into my placement on the mountain. Some entries are fleshed out into vignettes in this book and would have been forgotten if their skeleton had not been set down. Riffling through the journals reminded me of how much I wrote at the cabin and how badly I could write. Still, writing was a way to communicate. The purchase of a used manual typewriter at a garage sale provided the cabin pens a respite. Alternating handwriting with typewriting transformed cursive into crisp fonts imprinted upon the backsides of expired stationery or old manuscripts, or when absolutely necessary, fresh sheets of paper. The typewriter allowed for speedier thought transmission and perhaps the accelerated frontal lobe transfer, but fingers unable to sustain an equal pace meant more misspellings, typos, and run-on sentences. Whether penned or typed, the journal entries were written without the diapering of spell check. Every entry contains cross-outs, scrawled-in edits, and misspelling galores, as the following typed excerpt reveals. And this is the excerpt you've actually got to look in the book for, because we replicated as best as possible with what I crossed out and misspelled. So I'll wing it from here. So this journal entry. Breaking myself of response pattern means coming to full acceptance that I zam alone at the end of the line, the last call. The dues I pay accepting hardship and ecstasy, falling to the wayside of the tightrope stretched, the only foothold stretched between where there are no cars, no phone, no calling but my own. And in this calling I return to the unspoken, the underlying communication adhering matter. It is the space between the atmosphere not seen, not even with the highest power laser optics, This matter I, Zam, talking about is the common form of mystics and saints and common people who transcend the material forms of matter and matter of consciousness and ego. Shifting to the higher power of universal adherence, I see that there is right and wrong, corruption and rightness, joy and pain, pain and joy in rightness living. Some of those journal entries can get a little bit wordy. Remember, I think I was like 23 when I wrote that one. Yeah, I was. So after a blind man named Tony sold me a word processor, I began transcribing the journals into a K-Pro, a computer the size of a Volkswagen and just as quirky to drive. Despite losing his eyes in the Vietnam War, Tony's skills were intact enough to teach me how to operate it. I used the K-Pro when I was living off the mountain. Like the cabin, I am not hardwired, and my relationship with technology in a box shorted out a lot. Sometimes Tony could troubleshoot over a phone call when I got in a jam. When he could not, I unplugged the K-Pro and bear hugged it, stopping only to rest my arms on a cubicle trash bin as I walked 2 blocks to his computer store. Eventually, I trained myself to insert program and data disks into the correct drives, overcoming an occasional dyslexic disk maneuver that erased hours, weeks, or in the case of my doctoral dissertation, 1 month's worth of work. Off the mountain, when I wasn't piecing together an extremely frugal living as an artist and writer, I copied pertinent parts of the spiral-bound journals into the K-Pro, turning penned or typed words into neon green fonts on a television-sized screen. With a few keystrokes, ethereal words drained into the unperforated burr of paper spit out by a dot matrix printer. The original journals and their typed transcriptions were stored inside 6 plastic milk crates. After one wildfire too many, I removed most of them from the cabin along with family heirlooms. The rocking chair, silver service, oriental carpets, and those crates went with me wherever I moved. 25 years was the longest those prized possessions all stayed under one roof. Moving from that house involved a massive purge and the discovery that mud dabbers had built rock-hard nests in some of the crates' lattice sides or between journals themselves and had to be sprayed with an insecticide before being chipped away. Safe from the stinging wasps, I paged through the contents of each 8 by 10.5-inch notebook, loose sheets and unperforated printouts to determine if there was anything worth salvaging. Thumbing through this itinerary nest jogged me into recalling an incident, year, season, exchange, or observation. Rereading rambling entry verbatim put a finger on how bad living alone at the cabin could be. Preserved in these journals are accounts of incidents and people that over time, if not written down, would have been forgotten. Like mud dauber nests chipped away, all that is left of them are outlines on paper. So this current book takes up, fills in some of the gaps that the other books I just didn't include. So that concludes tonight. We'll see you in a couple weeks. I'm going to give you a tour of this studio. Can I just show these paintings now because they're going to go to the framers next week? So as a writer, I'm also a practicing artist, and I've got a show up at a winery right now. So a lot of the paintings are down from here, and I've got another show up at a library. But in the first week of May, there's a big studio tour in the Columbia Gorge, the Gorge Artists Open Studio Tour, and just last night I finally put the finishing touches on a bunch of paintings that are going to actually go to the framers next week, so they won't be around for the next presentation. So can I get up and just walk around and show that? Yeah, so these are all down here. These are all new paintings I just did. I work on location. I do a lot by full moonlight. These are on this thing called oriented strand board, which is what you build houses on. and I sand it down, and then I put black gesso over it, and it gives you a really nice, kind of interesting thing. You get to play with it. And then I call these kind of like my grandma paintings. I just finished these last week. They were down on the Columbia River. But yeah, these are just some of the works that I do in addition to the other ones, and I'll give you a tour next week. And we will see you, but always, this is the first day on the golf course. I just wore a short sleeve shirt, and I was hot. Stay hydrated. Bye-bye. See you next week.